Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into something that might just change the way you think about crime. We're asked to set aside our usual ideas about good and evil for a moment and instead explore a much deeper, more complicated story about where it all begins. This one idea is really at the heart of everything we're talking about today. And let's be clear from the get-go, this is not about excusing anything, not at all. It's about trying to understand the story that comes before the crime. A story that so often starts with a profound, painful silence. So let's just sit with that for a second. What if the most destructive things people do aren't really born from pure evil, but from a complete inability to express their own pain? What if violence is just a twisted, desperate way of trying to say something when you've never been given the words? Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea here. We're going to unpack this concept that violence can actually be a form of communication, a kind of brutal, broken dialect for people who were never taught the language of their own emotions. Just imagine for a second. You're a kid, and you grow up in a world where showing you're sad is seen as a weakness, where crying gets you in trouble, but taking something that isn't yours doesn't. You never learn how to name what's going on inside you. So eventually, that mind that never learned to speak emotion, it starts to speak through its actions. This quote, it just hits you, right? It's from a 17-year-old kid who was locked up, and it perfectly captures this idea. You realize his crime wasn't really about what he stole. It was about existence itself. It was his way of shouting into the darkness, "Hey, I'm here, see me, don't forget I exist." So the big question is, where does this all start? Where does that feeling of being invisible even come from? To get that, we have to go back, way back, to the first places a child's voice gets shut down, at home and then at school. Now, when we talk about the silence of the home, we're not talking about a peaceful house. It's the opposite. It's a silence filled with tension. It's a place where shouting is the only form of affection and punishment is the only kind of conversation. You learn fast that just staying quiet is how you survive. And the one place that's supposed to be your safe harbor becomes your first cage. To make this real, let's talk about a boy named Matteo. His home smells like sadness. His mom is just worn out, his dad's not around, and the TV is always on, trying to drown out the fights you can still hear underneath. You know, in a place like that, ideas like right and wrong just kind of dissolve. The only thing that matters is getting through the day. So Matteo takes all this quiet chaos and he brings it to school with him. His teacher just sees a kid who won't pay attention, a boy who's too quiet. What she doesn't see is a child trying to carry adult-sized problems. And so the school, the place that could have been his rescue, it just adds another layer of silence. It basically confirms what he already learned at home. Your story, your pain, it doesn't matter here. So what happens when home fails you? And school fails you too? Well, you're going to look for an education somewhere else, right? And that is when the street takes over as the teacher. And its lessons are, well, they're brutal. This is what the source calls the pedagogy of the street. It's a classroom that teaches through fear and imitation. And for a kid who is just desperate to belong somewhere, a gang can start to feel like a family. You know, belonging to something dangerous can feel a whole lot safer than being completely alone. In this school, kindness is a liability, and survival is the only thing you're graded on. And the curriculum it teaches follows this dark, logical path. First lesson, words are cheap, they mean nothing. Power is the only thing you can trust. The second lesson, you never, ever show you're scared. Fear will get you killed. And the final, terrible lesson, to really make it, to really be safe, you have to become the thing that everyone else is afraid of. Now, you might think this is just a straight line to disaster, but here's where the story takes a really unexpected turn. It's strange, but sometimes the very walls of a prison can become the first place where this cycle actually has a chance to break. It can be a space for quiet, for reflection, for a conscience to slowly wake up. And I really want to pause here and be super clear about something. Understanding all of this is not the same as making excuses. It's about looking at the roots of the problem so maybe we can prevent it from happening again. It's about figuring out how to heal the wound without ever forgetting the harm it caused. So how does that healing actually happen? The source material gives us a framework for it, called identity restoration theory. And the core idea is pretty profound. It says that real change isn't just about punishment. It's about helping someone piece their own story back together, reconnecting their feelings to their actions, and finding a sense of belonging again. And this is the massive internal shift we're talking about. It's a journey from that defensive mindset, where everything is someone else's fault, it's the system, it's how I was raised, to a place of recognition, a place where you can finally stand up and take back ownership of your own life. It's about seeing your pain not as an excuse, but just as part of your story. You can actually hear the shift happening in this quote from an inmate named Caleb. Think about that. That little change in language, from violence to fear, it's huge. That's the moment he stopped just defending his past and started to actually understand it. He's learning a new language for his own life. So once that awakening starts, it opens up a whole new path, a way for that wound, the very source of all the pain, to actually become a source of hope. It's about transformation. So what does that path look like? Well, it's built on these 4 key pillars. First, there's emotional education, literally learning how to feel again without being afraid of it. Then comes forgiveness, and this is mostly about forgiving yourself, which is how you start to reclaim your own sense of worth. Then you need understanding, weaving that pain into a new, more complete story. And holding it all together is hope, a genuine belief that change is possible. I love this final thought on hope. It's so powerful, right? Hope isn't about just ignoring the past or pretending bad things didn't happen. It's the exact opposite. It's about looking at your past with total clarity, lucidity, and being committed to finding meaning in it so you can build a different kind of future. And that leaves us right here with this one last really big question. A question that flips the whole thing around and points it back at all of us. Because if crime really is a language of pain, then punishing the speaker without ever trying to understand what they're saying, well, that just guarantees the screaming will continue. So the real question is, are we ready to start listening?